Chairman Capellion to explain the bill.
Great. Members, thank you for the opportunity to address the committee again. I'm here to speak to you about House Bill 149, which is designed to address the potential harms of artificial intelligence by establishing a comprehensive regulatory framework that emphasizes consumer protection, transparency, and accountability through purely the outcomes these systems can generate. This bill would broadly apply to all AI systems, ensuring that consumers are fully protected when interacting with these technologies. With this framework, Texas can ensure that negative, intentionally driven AI outcomes are mitigated, while also creating a streamlined process for litigation, a framework for future potential AI outcomes that the legislature may want to address, and strong consumer protections. Since the end of last session, I've been exploring this area, watching what other states are doing in this area in an effort to build upon their mistakes. A common issue that has been shared with me from stakeholders is legislating through the inputs of this new technology, which seriously hampers AI developers and deployers from creating new versions of this technology without fear of being out of compliance along the way. Over this time, I've explored many versions of how to do this. Ultimately, HB149 is a stakeholder-driven response, putting Texas on the map, showing other states that this is the correct approach. This bill seeks to highlight the outcomes that we want to mitigate, laying out what we as a state do not wish to occur, then letting AI developers and deployers innovate around these concerns. Consumers should know that they are protected from intentional system misuse and abuse, knowing where their data is collected and used for these systems, and that these systems will uphold their constitutionally protected rights. The provisions of this bill seek to do so by laying out clear do's and don'ts of what systems can and cannot be able to do. By doing this, we promote trust in AI systems and help grow this efficient tool, benefiting Texans and our AI economy in the process. One provision of this bill is to ensure that consumer engagement and protection is to require government agencies to disclose to users when they're engaging with an AI system using clear, plain language without deceptive practices. Additionally, the bill prohibits AI systems from being used to do a number of different uses, such as manipulate human behavior, incite harm, engage in criminal behavior, allow AI systems to perform unlawful acts of discrimination, bypassing informed decision-making, or engaging in political viewpoint discrimination, thereby protecting individuals from potentially dangerous or unfair outcomes. Furthermore, this bill empowers the Attorney General with robust enforcement authority to investigate and penalize violations, including the imposition of civil penalties for noncompliance. By requiring disclosure on government use of AI systems, setting up an online complaint mechanism, and establishing investigatory and civil penalty process, this legislation seeks to mitigate the negative impacts of AI while promoting its responsible development and use. These provisions collectively ensure that the adoption of AI across various sectors will not only drive innovation and efficiency, but also safeguard the fundamental rights and safety of consumers, making this bill an essential tool for balancing progress with protection. In order to balance innovation and regulation, there also exists a sandbox to be administered by DIR, which will allow for good actors to come develop new systems in a safe environment without fear that they may be investigated, that they have taken proper precautions, and notified the state accordingly. An advisory council is formed to ensure that continuous public input and engagement is taken. The council will serve as a body to hear feedback and study how specific regulations might hinder AI development and deployment, as well as study potential negative outcomes that may need to be addressed by the legislature in future sessions. Lastly, I wanted to address some of the comments that people have brought together. For those of you who don't know, I have probably spent the last 18 months working on a framework for the state of Texas, and we have heard and we have spoken to a stakeholder group that has at times exceeded over 200 different organizations. And as you can imagine, it's hard to make everyone happy. Sometimes it's hard to make 5 people happy. And what we're trying to do is focus not on making everybody happy, but first and foremost, protecting public citizens and their safety and their fundamental rights. At the same time, we want to do this in a way that AI will continue to flourish and be innovative here in the state of Texas. And so one particular opposition letter I do want to address, which is net choice. In each body, each session, this body has always prioritized online children's safety, cracking down on pornography on the internet, and really the only group that's ever opposed the bills that we've all supported has been a group called Net Choice. And so I'm not surprised that they're one of the 300 people that has an issue with this bill. But I am so thankful for all of the other groups that have spoken to us continuously, that have provided input, and we have taken a significant amount of of the suggestions that have been made over the course of the last few months. This bill contains strong protections against AI systems from being made with the intent to develop or produce child sexual abuse material or any other sexual material that can be made intentionally on these systems. AI technology has great potential to provide needed assistance to a variety of industries, helping to create efficiencies that can save money, time, or improve the quality of service or life of those that utilize it. However, we cannot ignore the potential harmful outcomes, and House Bill 149 will provide these protections for consumers, balancing innovation and regulation and building upon the principles of the free market to do so. I look forward to working with all of you and other members of the legislature and, of course, our stakeholders to continuing to approve this bill and to address other areas of AI outcomes as they may be of concern. And probably the longest layout ever. I'm happy to answer any questions and reserve the right to close.
Thank you, Chairman Capriglione. Members, do we have any questions for Chairman Capriglione? No.
If not, I respectfully reserve the right to close.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This time we'll move to testimony. The chair calls James Zerniowski. Thank you for being here today. We show that you registered as James Zerniowski on behalf of Americans for Prosperity, and you are against the bill. Is that correct?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Don't worry about the last name. I know it's brutal seeing all those letters there, so
No,
it's totally
I
fine.
appreciate it. Thank you.
But thank you. Chair Capriglione, members of the committee, my name is James Chernowski, and I'm the Senior Policy Analyst focused on issues surrounding technology and innovation at Americans for Prosperity. Thanks for providing us with the opportunity to share our perspective on HB 149, the Texas Responsible Artificial Intelligence Governance Act, today. The original version of this proposal, which was HB 1709, had a similar companion in the state of Virginia that was just vetoed by Governor Glenn Youngkin, who noted that that particular legislation would turn back the clock on Virginia's economic growth, stifling the AI industry just as it's taking off, and that there are many laws currently in place to protect consumers and place responsibilities on companies relating to discriminatory practices, privacy, data use, libel, and more. We appreciate and applaud Representative Capriglione's efforts since introducing this legislation to incorporate modifications, removing many onerous and problematic provisions in the underlying legislation that were flagged by numerous groups, including our own. Particularly, we appreciate his narrowed focus on the use of this technology by the government and its adverse impacts it might have on Texans. However, we believe that some problematic provisions remain in the current version before the committee today, and respectfully recommend that they oppose moving forward with this legislation in its current form. Notably, in Section 551.56, the legislation attempts to have it both ways, trying to treat political viewpoint as a protected class, while simultaneously recognizing in Section 551.058 that disparate impact alone is not sufficient to demonstrate evidence to the intent to discriminate. That would be an expansion of discrimination law in a way that also infringes on private actors' First Amendment rights of their own. In that same section, the legislation would bar social media companies from utilizing artificial intelligence to engage in aspects of content moderation. While we understand the reasoning behind such a provision, it also opens up the legislation to a legal challenge. In Moody v. Net Choice, the Supreme Court recognized that social media platforms, similar to alternative forms of media, are entitled to editorial discretion afforded underneath the First Amendment. This provision would run directly against this finding by the Supreme Court and needlessly create a situation where the state has to expend taxpayer money to defend a law that knowingly has a problematic provision. We understand the concerns around content moderation choices by these platforms, but a tangential case in Murphy v. Missouri showed where the energy around those concerns should be laser focused. In that case, we saw evidence of the government leveraging its position, resources, and power to pressure social media companies to take action on content. Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Meta, acknowledged this reality when it came to how the government pressured Facebook around COVID-19 content. It's also worth noting that many of these platforms have gone and adjusted their various policies over the last year and change, much of which was driven by the response they've seen from the public's reaction to their approach in content moderation. Ultimately, the solution to this particular issue isn't necessarily focusing on the platforms themselves, but rather the government and preventing it from doing such things ever again. Even Representative Capriglione's amendments reflect this reality to a degree.
Please wrap up in a few seconds,
Yeah.
if you don't mind.
Texas has been a big winner in recent years, attracting tech companies and their investment away from California, in part because of that business-friendly climate. It stands to gain even more. We've seen proposals like the right to compute legislation in New Hampshire and Montana, and the Learning Lab in San sandbox programs in Utah, which offer a more compelling path forward. And we stand ready to work with Representative Capriglione and other legislators to have a better path forward on AI legislation. So thank you for the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you for your
Welcome
testimony.
questions.
Thank you. Members who have any questions of the witness? Thank you so much for your testimony.
you.
The chair calls Albert Bett. Thank you for being here today. We show that you registered as Albert Bett on behalf of Insurance Council of Texas, and you are neutral on that bill. Is this correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. You may begin.
Thank you. I'll keep my remarks brief. I know it's late in the day. I want to thank the chair and his staff for working with us on this bill. I represent the Insurance Council of Texas. We're a property and casualty trade association with about 400 member companies. We're not the 300 he was referring to earlier. And our members have an interest in this bill. Obviously, we use AI for various purposes in insurance. Really only two concerns, and as I said, the chairman's office has been very good with working with us on this, and I think we're close. I want to point out our two concerns deal with section as file 551058, the unlawful discrimination. The insurance code, and let me point out the insurance industry is very heavily regulated. The insurance code has specific provisions describing unfair discrimination. The term unlawful discrimination is not used for insurance. And that includes prohibiting in coverage or rates, prohibiting on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, age, gender, marital status, et cetera. What we've talked about with the chairman's office is finding some way to recognize that specific law and not put in conflicting provisions that would exist as filed so far. Hopefully we can come to some agreement on that. The insurance code also includes some provisions allowing the AG's office to enforce provisions in the insurance code regarding unfair competition and unfair methods and practices by insurance companies. We'd like to find a way to protect that as well and not, as filed, create some dueling enforcement between the AG's office and the insurance code. And these provisions in Chapter 541 of the insurance code have existed for a number of years and give the AG authority for enforcement, injunctive relief, class action lawsuits, and to help enforce the laws if there is unfair practices or unfair discrimination in the code. So we look forward to continuing working with the chairman's office and coming to hopefully some agreement on this. But again, I appreciate their efforts, and we want to make sure we can do something that's good for Texas, but also protects the regulatory structure in place for the insurance industry here in the state. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Members, do we have any questions of the witness? No. Thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you.
The chair calls Renzo Soto. Thank you for being here. We show that you registered as Renzo Soto on behalf of TechNet, and you are neutral on the bill. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you for being here. You may begin.
Vice Chair Bojani, members of the committee, I would like to, well, first of all, for the record, Renzo Soto, Executive Director for Texas in the South, representing TechNet. We are on the bill. And I do have written testimony here for y'all. Apologize for that. I want to start by thanking Chairman Capriglione for the process that he's put out on this particular issue. He's been graciously working with stakeholders, including industry, throughout the past year, hearing our concerns, hearing our feedback on this very important issue. And in the written testimony that's being passed around there, we are highly excited about the potential of AI responsible development and deployment here in Texas. Our state in particular stands to benefit from a lot of the different applications and unique use cases of AI that are already being realized out in the field. These things include heightened cybersecurity processes, being able to solve some of the greatest medical challenges of our time, like earlier ways to detect cancer, and with the burgeoning industries here within the state, as well as the established ones like aerospace, medicine, and biosciences, and more. They are going to be leveraging these technologies in conjunction with one of the largest technology workforces in the country that's here in Texas. So we appreciate that House Bill 149 includes key components for striking the balance between safeguarding against legitimate harms and continuing to allow for innovation. These include aligning provisions with existing laws to ensure there is no conflict or burdensome overlap, as well as providing flexibility to AI developers and deployers so that they can comply while continuing with innovation. We are working with Chairman Capriglione to secure further improvements to the bill. Those are focused mostly on further alignment with existing statute, securing necessary clarifications for compliance, as well as other technical recommendations. For instance, we do share some of the operational concerns that there might be included with the political viewpoints section that's within this bill, and we've been grateful that the chairman has been very open to hearing our perspective on that, and we look forward to working with him on addressing that issue. So thank you again for the opportunity. We're glad to be a resource on this issue, and we are grateful for the opportunity to have been engaged as a stakeholder, and will continue to do so. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Members, do we have any questions of the witness? Thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Chair calls Hasib Abdullah. Thank you for being here today. We show that you registered as Hasib Abdullah on behalf of yourself. And
Yes,
you
thank
are
you.
for the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Bojani.
You may begin.
My name is Hasib Abdullah. I represent only myself. I'm for House Bill 149, but I want to speak about it. I think it's a Herculean task that the representative had to take trying to do this. I think it tries to keep Texas ahead of the curve in this booming AI industry, especially in the state of Texas. But one thing I would recommend is the very first line of the bill, H551, tries to define artificial intelligence. Specifically, it says, normally associated with human intelligence. So if that definition kind of falls apart, the rest of the bill, which I think is really good, falls apart as well. So maybe saying something along the lines of, I'll give you an example. Right now, there's some drones who people are training to kind of think like insects or birds and stuff. So you may have a situation where someone might try to sneak past that. So like the very early researchers of AI actually defined AI as agents that perceive their environment and take actions that maximize their chances of achieving defined goals. So I would recommend, Chair, and to this committee and to the author, maybe saying something along the lines of having the definition, and because the legislature only meets every 2 years, that doesn't meet with the pace that AI is changing so quickly, to say that the definition as you have it written down, but then say, or as defined by the council that the bill talks about, or as defined by the National Institute of Science and Technologies, which obviously meets on a regular basis. Because if you just use that definition in 6 months' time or in 9 months' time, it's going to change, and it's going to make the whole rest of the bill maybe not as relevant as it should be. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Do we have any questions? Thank you very much for your testimony. Chair calls Glenn Hammer. Thank you for being here today. We show that you registered as Glenn Hammer on behalf of Texas Association of Business, and you are neutral on the bill. Is that correct?
That's correct. Mr.
You may
Chairman,
begin.
members of the committee, Glenn Hammer, Texas Association of Business, and testifying on HB 149. And I want to thank the chairman for his terrific job of putting together a stakeholder approach that has helped really make dramatic improvements in this legislation. Texas is becoming a hub for AI innovation, and recent investments reflect that. Apple announced plans for a $500 billion investment with a big plant in Houston. Google, Amazon, Meta, Siemens, and others have invested or plan to invest billions in Texas. And of course, the Stargate project starting in Abilene, Texas, another $500 billion total AI investment. Another prime example is Austin-based US Ledge AI. They're using AI to improve legislative efficiency inside and outside government while advancing accessibility and transparency at the legislature. Texas is literally fostering thousands of startups that are pushing the boundaries of technology. And I'd like to say about 50% of the VC investment in the fourth quarter of last year, AI related. So important to point that out. So when it comes to AI, the priority should be responsible governments of AI, artificial intelligence, including the establishment of safeguards and oversight mechanisms that enable Texas to advance, innovate, and meet escalating energy demands. Those are the three big things. This is critical also for national security. We're in a great power competition against China. Vice President Vance in Paris, in my opinion, laid out probably the most important address ever by a vice president in terms of the importance of the U.S. to continue its supremacy in this area. We have a few specific areas where we do think we need to make some changes on. One, political viewpoint discrimination language needs to be aligned with existing constitutional frameworks. Two, we need to make sure enforcement language is clear and consistent and definitions are aligned with current statute and consistent throughout the bill. And you'll find a more detailed feedback in my written submitted testimony. But we want to strongly thank the chairman for the general direction of this proposed framework that we think would advance AI policy. And I just want to also say, as I go around the state and I speak with different chambers and small businesses, is the amount now that they are using AI in their businesses. Small businesses are relying on AI technology to cut costs and to be far more efficient. In fact, I just met with a great coffee company that is able to be more profitable, be more successful because of the use of AI. And Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my final comments is that Texas is the strongest economy we say now in the world. We need to be the leaders in AI to continue that, and with the light and right regulatory touch and all the above energy policy, no state will ever catch the state of Texas. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Thank you very much. Members, do we have any questions of the witness? Thank you so much for your testimony. The chair the chair calls Tanner Jones. Thank you for being here today. We showed that you registered as Tanner Jones on behalf of Cicero Action, and you are for the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. We begin.
My name's Tanner Jones. I'm the Director of Technology Policy at Cicero Action, a think tank based in Austin, Texas. I want to thank you all for your time today, and specifically want to thank Chairman Capriglione for his leadership on this very important committee and in AI policy in particular. The thrust of my remarks today is that if you dispel with the headlines surrounding AI regulation in Texas for the past several months and focus on the language of the bill before you today, you will find that it is a model for responsible governance. And I have two brief arguments in support of this thesis. First is that this bill eschews regulatory overreach by focusing on outcomes rather than capabilities. And second, it will be crucial to cement U.S. technological leadership. But first, on eschewing regulatory overreach. What we found in AI, in namely the European Union and some other American states, is a focus on risk-based capabilities, risk-based frameworks leading to regulatory overreach. The problem with this nature of regulation is it yields regulatory capture. While your constituents have access to you, it's only the most powerful and entrenched incumbent firms that have access to the regulators and actually determine the contours of what constitutes a risk. Thus, unsurprisingly, none of the important AI companies are based in Europe. They're all American companies. And this bill resolves that problem by doing two really important things. First is by prohibiting rulemaking authority for the council, and second is by closing statutory gaps. So rather than focusing on amorphous risk, it actually makes sure that when child sexual abuse materials are made with AI, that law enforcement can prosecute and that even the most textualist judge feels confident sentencing. But second is U.S. technological leadership. We just had our Sputnik moment in AI not too long ago with China's DeepSeek. And meanwhile, California, the former most important bulwark of American technological leadership, is currently drowning in red tape. Texas has an opportunity to seize the day. Already, there are 1,000 AI companies based in Texas. It is the top state to get a job in the AI boom with 40,000 job postings. And last year, technology contributed 20% to Texas's GDP. This council is going to look at reducing regulatory burdens, and the sandbox encourages innovation. I see I'm out of time, but the last thing I'll say is that it's very important for this country and everyone here, as AI takes over the economy, that this is an American and Texan future, not a Chinese future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, do we have any questions of the witness? All right. Thank you so much for your testimony. Chair calls David Dunmoyer. Thank you for being here today. We show that you registered as David Dunmoyer on behalf of Texas Public Policy Foundation, and you're for the bill. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. You may begin.
Great. Well, thank you, Vice Chair, committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of House Bill 149. Again, my name is David Dunmoyer with TBPF. Sister did a great job laying out a lot of the arguments I would have said. So I want to highlight what Chairman Capriglione has done with this bill, because this has been, as he mentioned, a multi-year long process that has had a transparent stakeholder process for input. And this should be coined the Texas approach. This is how good tech policy becomes law. But further, this is why we see with House Bill 4, House Bill 18, other kid safety and tech bills from last session, this is why states are copying us. Because this is the approach that balances innovation and hitting on all the points that have been made previous on why we continue to lead and innovate and outpace states like California, but also provide remarkable protections for consumers that ensure we aren't allowing this technology to proliferate unfettered with those consequences that we're already seeing. So the three things I want to highlight here is why this is a practical and enforceable law, because enforceability is going to be key as technology continues to move. First, it explicitly and clearly enumerates what these prohibited use cases for AI are, child sex abuse material, viewpoint discrimination, and so on and so forth. And this is an entirely new and unique and Texan approach to AI regulation that's an outcomes-based model. And so simply, if it's bad, if it's demonstrable harm, and it was done intentionally, there are consequences. To that point on consequences, this seeks to provide an ecosystem regulatorily that ensures compliance rather than seeking punishment. And you can see this, for example, there's a 60-day cure period. So if there's an unintentional harm that occurs, the onus and responsibilities on the company to prove it was not intentional or did not happen. And so it gives them a chance to redress their grievances. But also one thing that we've heard in a lot of our discussions too is this bill importantly provides clarity on the rules of the road instead of allowing for litigious hellscape where there's uncertainty, and this is why we need laws so we know what can and can't be done. And so finally, I just say that ultimately this bill accomplishes TBPF's goal in our research we outlined. We want to see a bill that ensures technology serves humanity and not the other way around. So I thank you all for your time today and Chairman Capriglione's efforts on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The chair recognizes that Representative Cook is present. Thank you. Members, do you have any questions of the witness? No? All right. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against HB 149? If not, the chair recognizes Chairman Capriglione to close on the bill.
Thank you. You just heard previous witness David Dunmoyer say technology should serve humanity, not the other way around. And that is what the goal of this legislation is. I am thankful to all the different groups that have testified here today in favor of the bill, along with the hundreds of others that have helped us get the bill to where it is. You know, with your help, obviously we have a committee substitute that addresses some of the last remaining concerns that we have, but with your help, Texas will lead on AI, both on making sure that we're the #1 place for innovation to occur in both AI and emerging technologies, but also that we will have the strongest protections for our constituents when it comes to creating guardrails around this important, valuable, but very powerful tool. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Representative Rodriguez-Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regarding the strongest protections, I see that on page 7, you talk about, it cites unlawful discrimination, disparate impact alone is not sufficient to show intent to discriminate.
Right.
But on page 13, there's a local preemption. So this is this chapter supersedes or preempts any ordinance, resolution, rule, or other regulation adopted by political subdivision. So what remedy do political subdivisions have if the disparate impact does in fact discriminate and the Attorney General does not feel that it doesn't discriminate or it goes along for whatever reason? What, as someone who supports local control, and my city council says, yes, whatever this is doing is more than disparate impact. It's affecting this part of the community that it can be, or it does have a discriminatory impact. Like, what remedy do local communities, local municipalities have?
Sure. Well, this Well, you're correct in saying what this legislation does, which it would preempt local ordinances and rules on this specific part as it relates to artificial intelligence and tools and so on, developers and deployers. And what I would say is, while I've always supported local control and have worked with my local communities as well very often, I would say that artificial intelligence is a very complicated topic that should be done on the state level. It would not be probably almost for sure in Texas's best interest to have different AI rules in every single jurisdiction in the state of Texas, because I can tell you, having worked on this, and this is, I think we've shrunk this bill down to 26 pages, but by the end it'll be 30-something, right? And so I would say that this is in the state's purview, and in that case, it would be the state that would create the laws as it relates to discrimination as they do today, and make those assessments on the state level. So yes, this would preempt every single community, every single school district from coming up with their own AI legislation. It just would be unwieldy. I'll just tell you that. You could literally spend your life trying to come up with every line and every sentence here, and I don't think that would be fair to our constituents or businesses or our universities to have different rules in every local municipality when it comes to artificial intelligence.
And so what remedy did they have, the local?
Well, they would have all the remedies that are in this bill,
the
right? I mean,
state.
it wouldn't be a remedy that people would have to their city council, but they would have a remedy to the state, right? I mean, our discrimination laws are all state laws, and any discrimination laws or any other laws on a city level would have to conform to what the state says. So the remedies in the bill are detailed in the enforcement section of this legislation, which would ultimately be the Attorney General's office.
Well, and it's unfortunate because, as you know, in this political climate,
In this what? I'm
there's-
sorry?
in this political climate, there is oftentimes adversarial roles versus, one collective that's really benefiting everybody. And so, anyway, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Members, any other questions of Chairman Capriglione? I did have one quick question,
Sure.
if I may. So sometimes AI, even without intent, can have certain biases in there, right?
Sure.
Like if you're using it for hiring purposes, if there's a gap in your employment history that may be looked unfavorably on you, and
Sure.
that can marginalize maybe more women than men. But this one only says if the intent is not to discriminate, then how do we go around and make sure that the AI that's being utilized does not have any biases like that?
Well, ultimately, what I would say, and it's been the back and forth on this legislation, which is what is AI and what is human, right? What is a company? And I would say in the case of a company that knowingly or unknowingly discriminates, there's already laws that talk about what that is. And just like any other tool that a company has, whether it's Excel or if it's artificial intelligence, if they are discriminating, they have to follow all the laws that we already have when it comes to discrimination. All we're saying in this legislation is the development of the tool itself would have to be intent and knowingly done that. But that does not in any way reduce the liability of a company that willfully discriminates.
The issue is that they're not trying to discriminate. It just happens because it looks at certain things in a different way. But yeah,
it would have to be done in a way that's purposeful. Again, the way that artificial intelligence generally works is it's being trained on data that is being fed by individual. And if they're knowingly putting in information that would cause the models to discriminate, then they would be under the auspices of this. But again, working on this, it's really easy to think of AI either as a tool or as a proxy human, right? And what we want to make sure is that we don't create new laws that are already on the books that have worked for a long time when it comes to discrimination and so on, but that we focus on the ones that are specifically on this technology.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Capriglione. Any other questions of Chairman? Okay, all right. And if there's no objection, the bill will be left pending. Is there objection? Hearing none, the bill is left pending.
Thank you, and I close. Thank you, and I close. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, and now for something completely different. Members, we will now move on to our invited testimony. Today, the committee will discuss Medicaid procurement and contracting. The state of Texas spends